All right, how's everyone today? Yay! All right. I'm dealing with that like post-lunch, like hangover, too much food, warm room kind of thing, right? Yep, all right. All right, so this is what you can learn from a 4-year-old about ponies and mobile UX. So after today's conference, if you go to andrewsmick.com, fullstackto, FSTO 2015, I'll have a bunch of links to the research that's mentioned inside the presentation and so on. You can follow me on Twitter at andrewsmick, and just to give you a quick background, I'm the program coordinator for the postgrad interactive multimedia program at Sheridan College. And I do have 3 kids, so a lot of this is based on my sort of research with kids and technology and so on. All right, so when I ever talk about kids and technology, I always start with this quote from Pew Institute. And it's people 2, 3, and 4 years apart are having completely different experiences with technology. So this is just like a little segue. You know, this is like what the Simpsons envision our future as. It's pretty close to what's happening in my house half the time. So this whole presentation is based on the feedback I got from my daughter when she was 4. And this is a little caricature I drew of her. Her name's Ariana. And I used to do a lot of projects in our backyard on my laptop. And she would play in the backyard. And she came up with this character called Sad Butterfly. And the Sad Butterfly had ponies for friends. So she would hide. So we would have this game where I would hide the little pony characters all over the backyard, and then she would search them out. And one day when I was working on a couple projects, like I said, okay, what if I took the client user group and substituted them for a 4-year-old? And this is sort of what the outcome of that is. So one of the projects was to build a relaunch of a website for a brewer. It had to be responsive, create a desktop and mobile user experience that captured the lifestyle and the brand, allowed users to participate in giveaways and so on, and it had to be optimized for mobile. So again, this was about 3 years ago, and I've updated the content with some more feedback from my daughter now that she's 7. And this is the other project. We're doing a mobile app for push promotions for an energy drink company, and what we came up with is these were the users. They were mobile, using the app in various settings, specifically bars and outdoor events, and we had to incorporate some social media into it and sharing with friends and so on. So what I did is we would play this game called Let's Find the Ponies, and we would run around the backyard. She would try to find the ponies and find all her friends and so on, much like you would find at an outdoor concert event, people running around trying to find their friends once you get separated and so on. So when I was working on these projects, I was trying to figure out some new ways of dealing with the content because the client kept kiboshing a lot of our ideas. So the idea was simply substitute all the content with ponies and do all my user testing with a 4-year-old. Good idea or bad idea? I don't know. I thought it was a pretty good idea at the time, and a lot of the stuff we incorporated actually worked with the client. So this is the deep dive part. So how many people do user research of any kind? A few people. Do you do the guerrilla type user research? You just go out and ask people random questions, or do you have a more formal process? Anyone? Who said no formal process? All right. So here's the thing. When I did this, I had to find out everything you can about the ponies. And every pony is unique. Each person has a different personality and behavior. And this actually translated into your users because just like your users, they all have unique behaviors, personalities, and so on. And you're trying to incorporate that into your mobile UX. So let's go back to this quote from the Pew Institute. So people 2, 3, 4 years apart having completely different experiences with technology. So when I started this, my oldest daughter was 11. Middle son was 6, and the youngest daughter was 4. We fast forward a couple years, now they're older. And my oldest daughter is 13, son's 9, youngest is 7. So my oldest daughter was born during evolving tech. So when I bought my first digital camera right before she was born, everyone remembers the digital camera with like 256 meg SD card in it, and you paid more for the SD card than you did for the camera. You could take like 3 whopping pictures, and then the SD card was full. My son was born 1 year before the iPhone was released. So the iPhone was released in around 2007. He was born in 2006. And my youngest daughter, her entire technology experience is everything is gesture-based. So, she has been given mobile devices, iPads, everything is gesture-based. Every once in a while, I'll catch her doing this. She'll be watching TV, and she'll go up to the thing when a commercial goes on, and she tries to do this. And I'm like, no, that's TV. It doesn't work that way. And she goes, why not? And I'm like, actually, it's a good question. Why not? And so this is all based on her sort of feedback and everything else. So this was my favorite phone I had for a long time. It's called the LG Voyager. Flippy phone, touch screen, full keyboard. Great phone until it went through the wash. And then this is what my daughter would always look at all the pictures I took when we were outside at the other kids' events. So she was at a soccer game, and she was like, I was complaining, hey, how do you use that? And she goes, now you swipe, then tap, and how to use my daddy's phone. So her whole idea is that everything is tap, tap, swipe. She has her own Twitter account if you want to follow it. So the whole idea is that this led to the whole UX as a balancing act, because I actually had to look at how she used everything. And for her, everything was swipe, swipe, tap. The other interesting concept was when she was using my phone, and it was actually for pictures, my wife called and she asked, why is there a phone in your camera? And I thought, all right. Interesting perspective on like multi-use devices. So we've got some constraints and behaviors. So these are what I pushed over to the 4-year-old, and then the capabilities and needs is what came from the project. And everyone's familiar with Fitz Law? Yes, no, sort of? All right. So, Fitz Law basically predicts how people will tap on devices or tap on target areas based on the function of the distance and the size of the target. So when I was building these projects, we were thinking about how big should the buttons be, what were the circumstances for the people using the buttons or using the apps, and then how to build the corresponding buttons. And there is some sort of a law of diminishing returns. You make the buttons bigger, you eat up all the real estate, you also make the user feel like you dumb down the application to the user, then the user doesn't like that. So we had all these different areas that we were wrestling with. So the initial app was designed by an in-house designer. So he had these really super small touch targets. And then we had all these big major problems during the usability because we had all these people trying to use the app in closed sessions, and they were hitting and mistapping and creating some problems for actually using the app. So everyone's familiar with the sort of the 44, 57, 72 model? Okay. So originally, when the iPhone 3 came out, the whole concept was you make the buttons 44 pixels square. That was the touch target. And this was because that's basically the size of the adult pad on an adult's finger. But then what ends up happening is you actually have to have some padding around it to make use for other finger sizes. So it goes to 57. And now the standard of practice is make things about 72 pixels square to accommodate for retina display and everything else, but it's also to accommodate for the use of the thumb. So 72 by 72 pixel square is roughly the push pad of your thumb, or the adult thumb. And this is one of the things that we did is we kind of experimented with these buttons. So the difference is if you use the 44 by 44 pixel square area for a button, you get some overlap on the buttons that were actually in the original design. So we actually started to move towards these larger buttons that were 72 by 72. And as you can see, the whole thumb pad area can actually fit into the button. And we actually had less tap errors and swipe errors and all that during testing. Any questions so far? No? Everyone had big lunch and is all like sleepy? Awesome. Okay, so one of the pro tips is you can actually buy touch templates to help figure out how big your target area should be. Here's my unwritten rule for finding out how big your touch target should be. Get a hot dog. And if you can push down on and use it like a stylus, and if you can actually make your buttons work with the tip of a hot dog, your touch targets are big enough. And then you have lunch at the same time, see? It's all about efficiency. Okay, so this is from Luke W. He talks about touch zones, how people hold their phones. So what we noticed is that with the user group, they're actually more towards the two-handed touch with the thumbs. Also, this is how kids tend to hold devices as well. And then you come up with what is easy, what is okay, what is hard to touch within the UI interface. So I took a couple pictures of my daughter playing with games. And what I noticed is that kids tend to push down with their entire finger, not just the tip. So they have a more direct means of touching. So it kind of mimics more what adults do in terms of touch targets. And the other thing is we had some design elements inside our UI for the two apps, the responsive website and the mobile app. And what happened is my daughter actually mistook those as button elements. They kind of looked like buttons, but they weren't buttons. So she kept hitting them. And anyone knows what happens when kids tap on a button in an app and it doesn't work? They do it again, and they do it harder. So the basic premise is if it looks like a button, it better be a button. And if it doesn't, they'll just press really hard. And when we did a couple user sessions with kids, we actually had to the point where kids were bending the phone. They're pressing so hard, trying to get the button to activate, and it was just a design element. So you have to be really careful when you start designing, because eventually people will do the same thing. And then we had this argument with skeuomorphism and flat design. So the whole question of in the app, which is the better looking button, the one on the left, the sort of rounded button, or the flat design button. This became an entire argument onto itself. How many people still have client issues where the client's do it this way, flat design, and you're like, it doesn't need to be flat? Yes, no? Sorta? Okay. So this was the original lock screen prior to Apple going to the flat design. And one day I accidentally updated the iOS on the iPad. So then this was the lock screen. And one of the problems is that now my 4-year-old, who was accustomed to this lock screen, was now dealing with this lock screen. And she actually could not use the app because she didn't know how to read at that point, or read her vocabulary, and the words that she could read was really limited. And they actually took away the nice, big, juicy button that says, with an arrow, which way to swipe, and so on. So then this was the end result of the UI. And all she wanted to do was play games. And she couldn't figure out where to play games. So the first thing, she runs into my office and says, who broke the iPad? Because she could no longer figure out what was going on in iOS 7, and she was a sad butterfly. So what had happened is the change to iOS 7 was, this was the Game Design Center, which actually had some gamey kind of imagery. And then it went to these 4 translucent bubbles. And she was like, I don't want to play with bubbles. I want to play, with the pony game. And the only thing she understood was the original icon. So I actually had to explain to her at length why this was the new bubble button, or the game button with the bubbles on it. And she's like, that makes no sense. So, from the words of babes. Okay, and then so I was designing icons for the app, and one of the things that she used to draw next to me on the floor with her crayons, and she would always pronounce this that I'm already an artist. So then I would tweet that out when she said it. And what she had is she had this easel, and I'd be working on some UI sketches and some user experience design concepts, and she would come running in and she would give me something like this. She goes, "You got to make it like this." And I'm like, "Can you explain this to me?" And she goes, "Yeah, you have to use this color like right there." And I'm like, "That's not bad." So I would scan in the colors, play with that color scheme, and then she would come in every once in a while. Like when I was working on the energy drink projects, and she would go like, "I want more avocado." And I'm like, "Okay, are you hungry?" And she goes, "No, make it green like avocado." And then I would sit there and I go, "Damn it, she's right." So then I would tweak the colors to make it more like avocado, scan in an avocado, get the colors out of it, and so on. And then we I did this sort of mock-ups of all the different ways we could present the application to the client. So we had the big buttons, then we had bigger buttons that kind of hung off the screen to say that there's more stuff below. We went with smaller buttons with labels. Then we went with bigger buttons with bigger labels. And every time I ran these tests across my daughter, she would just say, "I don't like it, but at least I still love you." So she boosted my confidence that way. So we have to rethink how we're going to present content. So what we did is we made these quick little mock-ups with the My Little Pony content instead of the user content. And then we would say, "Okay, can you find Pinkie Pie?" And she would just go, "Yep, there's Pinkie Pie." So we knew that the kids would actually scroll naturally, which is actually what adults do as well. And then we'd say, like, "Okay, can you find the other ones?" And she would just scroll through everything. So again, she would just go like scroll, scroll, and we had the same interactions with the actually adult in the user testing. So what I actually found out during this is when we started presenting content to the user in the app and in the responsive design website is adults tend to do pinch and zoom. Guess what kids love to do? Double tap. So pinch and zoom is actually a learned behavior. So every time we tested on kids would be like, try to double tap on the object to make it bigger for whatever reason, whereas adults would do this. And then we tried to figure out why kids would not do this. And it was simply that this is not a natural behavior or gesture that kids would use. So if you are designing things for kids, don't use pinch and zoom. You'll have no concept of pinch and zoom. You'll just frustrate kids, and then they'll press harder and then break the phone. So what we did is we went back to my original sort of statement for my daughter. Now swipe, then tap. How to use my dad's phone. And this became the premise of the build and all the UI and UX architecture that we built for the applications going forward. Questions? Yes, no? No? No comments? All right. Everyone had too much burrito? What? It's that burrito loginess. It just permeates the room. Okay, so what we started to do is we started working with some other concepts. So now what happened is we went back to the client, and the client is like, "I want off-canvas content." And we're like, "Why?" Because someone in marketing said off-canvas content was cool. So we're like, "All right, let's try off-canvas content." So then what ended up happening is we had just a simple button action for the app. Press on the thing, content slides over. And then tap on again, closes. So then we gave it to my daughter, and she was doing, this was happening. And we're like, "Why?" and we couldn't really figure it out. And it wasn't until later that we ran a couple more tests with kids. And during this whole process, all the kids were like, especially my daughter, she's like, I'm a sad butterfly. And I'm like, why? Because I can't get to the off-screen content. And what was happening is we figured out that kids tend to press versus tap. So it looks like a tap to us, but it's actually a press. And what we simply did is in the JavaScript is we said, okay, let's, instead of doing the on-release, do on-press. And this solved a lot of the usability and UX problems for creating off-canvas content. So then what we ended up having is once we changed it to on-press rather than on-release, everything worked better and so on. And what we thought about is in the context of the use of the subscriber or the client or the user base is that the more you are in a louder, more darker area and imbibing certain kinds of beverages, the less accurate you will be and the less likely you'll be using more of a press than an on-release and so on. So this worked really well. And then we thought, okay, what would happen if the user turned off JavaScript? So we came up with this model where you just would tap on the burger menu and we would jump down to the base content. So I was with my daughter. I was like, okay, can you find Princess Celeste? And she'd go like, you have to tap on the menu and find Princess Celeste. And she'd go like, boop, there's Princess Celeste, happy butterfly. So what we did is we simply just did the old school anchor tag. So hit the menu button. If JavaScript is turned off on the phone, created a name anchor at the bottom, jump to the bottom, have all the quote-unquote off-canvas content or menu system buried at the bottom. And most of the users didn't actually know that they were jumping to the bottom. To them, it was just a continuation of the scrolling of the content. Questions? Yes, no? No? All right. So think of this way. Simple solutions are elegant. And the more elegant they are, the more simpler and everything that you're going to have is going to work for you. So you'll never hear, hey, where's the off-slide menu or off-canvas menu? What you hear is your menu doesn't work, fail, hashtag fail. And then like the more you think about how you're going to get the 4-year-old to interact with the content, actually translates well to how your adult user base will use content or navigate through content. So what we did with the content is we had to figure out some way of organizing the content. So what we did is we kind of did what the original feedback was, is that we just kind of let the users let us know what should go where. And what I did is I said, this is an app for a contest or promotion. How are we going to get everybody there? And what I did is I took all my daughter's toys and I just dumped them on the table and I said, organize these toys like you would be if you were going to a party. And she came up with this concept where you had like all the ponies lined up and all the ponies invited their friends and we started to work from that. And what I noticed was she started to actually organize the content based on color. So, certain things would be under a certain kind of color tab or button. She would organize it that way. And then I thought that was a fluke, so then I did it again, where I took this card game called Sleeping Queens, and I said, organize the content based on you inviting your friends to a party. So what she did is I said, okay, the people at the top are the people who are going to invite their friends. And what she did is, again, she sorted everything by color. Not by suit, not by imagery, but by color. And I thought about this a little bit more, and because what we were doing is we were building the app with My Little Pony content in it instead of the real content, but the client's content was color-coded as well, and we said, hey, let's just color-code the navigational system and so on. And what we found out is that when you start color-coding your content and the associated content that's the same color, you actually get a more natural navigation, and it's actually easier for users to do recall. I will give you a quick example of this. How many use like the Starbucks app to order coffee? All right. How many people have online banking on their phones? Okay. Do you look for the logo or do you actually look for the color of the logo? Color of the logo. Okay. So I use Tangerine, and all I do is I look for the orange little logo-y thing. For Starbucks, I just look for the green thing. I actually am not reading the labels anymore. And what we found is that regardless of age, color coordinating or this color recall is actually a lot quicker, faster, and it's more natural. Then what happened is our client just started dumping more and more stuff on us. So you always have to have a Hello Kitty chainsaw to cut through all the extra content and so on. And the general rule is you want about 2/3 of the original content actually in the device. So for mobile and for smaller screens, about 2/3. The smaller the screen, keep cutting the content down, and eventually you actually have the necessary content for the device or application. For pharma, it's probably there's like a whole bunch of legal requirements. You just can't like say, let's take out this, because litigation a go-go and all that kind of fun stuff. How many people ask for all their content up front before they start designing from the client? How many people get all their content up front from the client? Sorta, okay. I worked for a company else. We did a lot of pharma care. My horror was when all these started merging, and like you're in the middle of like designing something, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're no longer Pharma X, we're now Pharma ABC, and then all the products would change, the color codes would change, and so on. So what we did is we asked for the client to give us all their content. They gave us basically like this giant manual of content. We chopped it all up into bits and color coded it. And again, we actually had higher recall and so on. Any questions? No? All right. So what we did is once we had all the content edited and everything, we started looking at performance. So how many actually people for your mobile UX, mobile responsive content, or your app design actually look at performance as a metric? 1, 2, 3, about a few people. How many people just say, hey, this is what the client wants, this is what they get? All right. So performance should be a design metric. And what we started to do is, one of the reasons we had to do this is when we were building the app for the energy drink company, what we found out later is that they were actually going to hold all the events inside a warehouse, a cinder block warehouse with big steel roof. So what ended up happening is on the initial release of our app, all the people went into the promotion event area, couldn't download anything, could not get any of the promotional coupons, couldn't like do any of the surveys and all this kind of stuff. Client, came back, yelled at us for many minutes, and then yelled at us some more after we said sorry. And so one of the things we had to do is figure out how to get the performance up for the content, and we actually started to think about what would be the extreme use case. So does everyone know where all the blackout areas are for their cellular networks? Find the blackout area and make that part of your testing routine. So near my, where I do a lot of the work with my team, there's like a little alleyway, 0 reception in the alleyway. So what we do is when we have some prototypes, we run into the alleyway, see if we can actually download stuff, and things of that nature. Is that a question? No? Oh, okay, sorry. So how many people use what's called a design skeleton? No, this is actually, I didn't make a slide of it, but what we do is we found out that if you have lots of content, and if you actually make little squares with a really light gray opacity outline, people will actually sit and wait for that box to get filled up. Whereas if you just have this, so this would be the person's phone, and eventually all phones are going to be this size anyway, so might as well get used to it. And would be different than if that's what you presented to the user. The user will think if you're in a very low Wi-Fi or low reception area, users will stick around here. They'll wait beyond that 3 to 5 second wait time to see if the content loads with a skeleton. Whereas here, if you just give them a blank screen, what are users going to think? It's broken. There's nothing there. So this is why we say, like, when you test for performance, one of the things that can help you is actually doing a design skeleton. It's in the notes that are on the website that I'll post after the conference. But you want to start thinking performance. So what we do is now we actually put performance into our design protocols. So when we make a prototype, a mock-up, we actually run out, test it everywhere under like 1 bar situations, low Wi-Fi situations. What you'll end up happening is that you'll get so used to using the Wi-Fi that you don't actually think this is how things perform in the wild and so on. How many actually have done tests on their websites or apps, low battery usage? Like when the person's battery is in the red zone. That would be another thing to put into your performances design protocol, is actually test your app and test your website under like low power. Because what ends up happening is the Wi-Fi connection and the network connection, the lower they are, they're working harder to get the data, and it drains the battery faster. So what you'll end up having is a person's like, yes, I'm about to get my, no. Nothing. And then you have sad butterflies all in like a promotional event. So try to test in the wild as much as possible. So once you get into the prototyping stage, get out of the office, run away from your laptop, run around the streets of Toronto or the GTA, testing out your stuff, and you'll actually get better feedback on how well it's performing that way. And then drop the Wi-Fi. Try not to use Wi-Fi as much as humanly possible, because you'll end up actually thinking that this is how everything should be working, but it's actually on your Wi-Fi network, and people will not have that same experience outside of once they get outside. And the best thing is test under 1 bar. So the more you can test under 1 bar, you'll actually have a better indication how the performance is working with your content and so on. Any questions so far? Yes?
Is there a good way to mock that under simulation?
There's actually a couple things. You can use the Chrome tools, dev tools. So when you go into Chrome dev tools, you can actually arrest the download, and it gives you like the different connection speeds in a drop-down.
On Chrome mobile too?
Not on Chrome mobile, but in the Chrome desktop. If you use the Dolphin browser on mobile, it actually has a plugin called Speed Test, and you can actually simulate different speed connections through the Dolphin browser. But the best thing is to actually just go outside. It's actually good for you to get up from your desk anyway and go outside every once in a while. There's like coffee and pizza outside and burritos. So like I said, we start doing this more and more. So one of the things that I did is like you can buy one of these like Wi-Fi connection testers from Best Buy and Staples. They're like under $9, and you can just walk around your neighborhood, test where the low connectivity is, and then test your apps that way. And the other thing is just to map out where all the dark spots are in Toronto for applications. If you really want to see how the performance of your application or your website is, go into the basement of your building or go into a parking garage. That'll be a nice test to see how well your stuff is performing. And then the idea is you want to be able to get all of your users to the content, all of the users to meet up with their friends, all of your users to do whatever they need to do, so you don't have sad butterflies. So the main thing is if you have a sad user, the sad user is going to let every other user know that they're sad. Happy users tend not to tell their friends that they're happy. It's just one of the ways that our social media psyches work. We don't say, I just had the best burrito ever. Hashtag yum yum or nom nom. Usually it's like, I've had the worst burrito ever, burrito fail, and so on. So what you want to think about is how you're going to get or help the butterfly find the ponies. So if you can actually think about how your users is going to go through the content, find content, and if you can have a 4-year-old find the ponies, so can your user. And this is sort of the idea is that the more you think about a 4-year-old using your stuff, the better off your usability models will be. If you think about a 4-year-old looking through your content, the more likely that's what your users are going to be like. Bookmark this or make notes. Go to andrewsmick.com/FSTO2015. I'll have a website up with all the stuff.